roughly 6 months of fast-paced and unplanned warfare. One retired Navy captain saying, quote, "We are excessively wearing out our ships. The longer that you're working them hard at sea, the more the Navy needs to invest time into maintenance." The Navy did not respond to MS Now's request for comment about delayed maintenance on those ships. I'm going to bring in MS Now Pentagon reporter Priya Sridhar, who broke that story. Ned Price, Mitch Landrieu are still with us. Priya, you reported on problems with the USS Lincoln, but experts say this kind of maintenance debt has a domino effect. What are they telling you?
Yeah, that's right, Alicia. Well, typically when an aircraft carrier comes back to the United States, it goes into the docks for a maintenance period, which is usually around 7 to 8 months. But because we've seen so many aircraft carriers double the length of their deployments from what's usually about 6 to 7 months to as long as 12 months, it makes sense then that maintenance period then can get extended to a year or a year and a half. And in addition to that, specifically with the Lincoln, we saw it go at sea for 208 continuous days without a port call, which meant that when an aircraft carrier pulls into port, it allows mechanics and engineers and contractors to come on the ship and address different maintenance issues that could come up. So all of that combined together is creating a potential for extreme danger and safety issues, because when you're talking about those catapults and those arresting gears, I mean, if something were to go wrong there, it could lead potentially to a deadly accident, Alicia.
You know, Mitch Landrieu, Priya and I were on earlier this week. We were talking with Amy McGrath, and she reminded us this is not about the members of the armed services needing to be cuddled. It is not specifically about a ship itself. It is about clear leadership from both the commander-in-chief and the person who leads DOD. I want you to take a listen to what Senator Mark Kelly said about the president's leadership.
He took our country to war without a strategic goal, without a plan. Now he has no way out of this, and he's stuck. And this has been bungled right from the beginning. And he's got a Secretary of Defense who has no idea what he's doing. I think the most incompetent Secretary of Defense that we've ever had in our history. And the American people are suffering because of this. We also have 18 dead Americans, for no reason.
Mitch, how would you describe the leadership that is coming from the White House and from the Pentagon right now?
Well, again, as Pete Hegseth's words would use, war fighters actually know how to prosecute a war. And obviously, this is just a complete disaster. First of all, the president promised people that he was going to end the war in Ukraine on day one and stay out of foreign wars. Instead, the war in Ukraine is just blowing and going. And of course, he started this war of choice, and he did it in a way that was not planned well. He picked Pete Hegseth, who was incompetent, to be the head of this war effort. And what did Pete Hegseth do the other day? Was he doing something to fix this particular problem? No, he was campaigning as Secretary of Defense. We haven't seen this in our lifetime. He was campaigning in Iowa rather than taking care of his quote-unquote war fighters. So again, this is an indication that the president has lost focus, that his leadership, it can't be called that, is just high incompetence. And they have basically bungled what was a war of choice, and they didn't even prosecute well because they didn't plan well for it. It all goes back to the president. So if a president's reckless, if he cares more about ballrooms and bombs, if he can't even prosecute a war and he's not taking care of the American people, what the hell is he doing? So it is a mell of a hess, as we like to say down here on the bayou.
Part of what has become so notable is the fact that you have family of sailors, of Marines aboard the Lincoln who've been increasingly voicing their concerns to the press and the Pentagon. I want to play for all of you some of what the family of one sailor told the New York Times. It starts with her mom and then her husband.
I keep hearing, well, they signed up for this. They didn't sign up to be on a ship in the middle of the ocean with no port calls, no feet on the ground. That wasn't in the brochure when they signed up.
She's been struggling. I think the only thing that helps her is when she gets videos from me of the boys. That brings her spirits up.
To infinity and beyond. Mama loves you, Gunny.
She recorded this for the boys while she's on deployment because she misses them so much. I haven't gotten as much sleep because I had been nervous about her. And I'm also nervous about the boys because I don't have my partner here to help me with them.
These conditions, what do they mean for morale? What do they mean for recruitment? And then in some, what do they mean for our national security?
Well, look, there's a cost, there's a toll that's incurred by these warships, and we've seen some of the conditions aboard them. But yes, we have to be most concerned with the mental health, with the physical, with the safety concerns that our men and women in uniform face every single day. These are people who signed up for sacrifice. They're no stranger to sacrifice. But these are individuals who, by and large, want to know that their sacrifice are being made in service of the United States, of our national security, of our foreign policy, of the safety, security, well-being, health, and prosperity of every single American. And it's really hard, if not impossible, to make that case right now, which I think is also sapping morale. Look, one can argue if there was ever any strategy associated with this misadventure in Iran. I would make that case. I don't think there was ever a real strategy tethered to it. But if there ever was one, we've moved past the strategy phase now, and now we're at the phase of throw spaghetti against the wall and see what sticks. And just last night, to the point of what we're asking our sailors, airmen, and Marines to fight for, President Trump said it's now about economic pressure, maximum economic pressure. Okay, well, you know what his strategy in his first term against Iran was called? Maximum pressure. We have tried this before. It did not work the first time. If it's going to work this time, there are two problems standing in the way. One is the UAE, and the other is China. This president, I don't think, will be willing to ask the UAE, that has provided sweetheart deals to him, to his family, to his friends, to make the kind of economic sacrifices they'll have to do. And with President Xi of China coming to the United States on September 24th, a relationship the president wants to keep at equilibrium for the American economy and in turn for his poll numbers, most importantly, I don't think he wants to upset that either. So it goes back to the question of what's our strategy? How are we going to pull our service members out of this with anything in return?
And who has input into that strategy? Pete Hegseth's wife, Jennifer Hegseth, is attracting attention for her unusually active role in the Pentagon. You have the New York Times reporting she is his most influential advisor and his de facto producer at the Pentagon. She has prepped him for appearances, sat in on his meetings with journalists, interviewed potential members of his staff, and brainstormed ideas for the Defense Department videos he and sometimes she appears in. She also sits in highly sensitive intelligence meetings. That's according to reports, which has made allies incredibly uncomfortable. I wonder, Priya, what you were hearing from inside the Pentagon.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is incredibly hypocritical because Secretary of Defense Hegseth kicked out most of the press corps because he was saying that we were wandering around the halls trying to get access to classified information. Yet you're seeing his wife be privy to very sensitive information when it comes to military operations. So I think his logic just doesn't apply when it's not convenient for him. And I think that is what's most upsetting to most people, journalists, I should say, that work inside of the Pentagon specifically, is that if we're not allowed to go inside because we're supposedly trying to solicit classified information from people, then why is someone who doesn't have a national security background, doesn't have a security clearance, sitting in on these extremely important meetings?
Mitch, I mean, it happens at the same time that the longtime publisher of the military newspaper Stars and Stripes is retiring due to clashes with the Pentagon over coverage. In a memo seen by the Associated Press, Max Lederer Jr. wrote that it had, quote, become clear that my philosophy of leadership and my understanding of the value and mission of Stars and Stripes differ in fundamental ways from the direction of the leadership of the Department of Defense has for the organization. What does that tell you, Mitch Landrieu, about what is happening at the Pentagon?
Well, again, he's basically destroying the Pentagon and its top leadership. If you put the pictures up of all of the warfighters that he has fired for some strange reason, which have had, I mean, years and years and years of incredible experience, and now he's relying on people who just happen to be personally close to him to give him information about how to fight a war that he wasn't prepared to fight. I mean, it's just, it should make everybody in America weep. I mean, it's one of the reasons why they basically drove the car off into a ditch and they don't know what to do. He doesn't have the most competent people around him. All the while he's complaining about DEI. He's not running an organization based on merit. But again, it all goes back to the president. The president of the United States put Pete Hegseth there. The president of the United States has given him room to run. The president of the United States allowed him to go to Iowa. So the fish rots from the head. The buck stops at Donald Trump's office. He is too busy on the helipad and the ballrooms to focus on what really matters to the security of the American people. And he's lost focus about reducing people's costs, which is the reason they said they elected him. And they're pissed. And I think they're going to deliver a blow to him in 76 days or so.
And why he keeps claiming that magically oil prices are going to be the lowest you have ever seen. You just keep waiting. Mitch Landrieu, Priya Sridhar, Ned Price, thank you all so much for getting us started.
I shot, and in this case, he said, I shot Mr. Thompson and he died. And I knew that shooting Mr. Thompson was illegal. Of course he did.
Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. Well, who is he? Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. And who is he? Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. And what he do? And he's gonna react to all the self-snitching. Oh.
Hi, this is Bruce Rivers. Welcome to another fun-filled episode of Criminal Lawyer Reacts. I happen to be Bruce Rivers. Did you know that? I'm Bruce Rivers, and guess what I am? I am your very own personal board-certified criminal defense lawyer, coming to you with my pearl handle of pistol cufflinks, so graciously gifted to me by our former content genius that you knew and I knew as Michael Rivers, my son, God rest his soul. Today we're reacting to Mangione. You remember Chuck Mangione?
How you doing out there? I'm Chuck Mangione.
You know, he's a trumpet player. That's before your time, I'm sure. Unless you're a snooty white wine drinker, drinking your Chardonnay and eating your bowl of popcorn on your toughly squared couch. But before we get to our reaction today, guess what? This is brought to you by AskALawyer.com. AskALawyer.com is a very effective way for $49 that you yourself can get a living, breathing human being as a lawyer and AI. AI is great in some circumstances, but it doesn't have all the answers. That's why you check it against the lawyer, you know, and then everything you do is privileged. So AI with a lawyer, you get AskALawyer.com. A plus B equals C squared. Is that what it is? No, I don't think that's the right equation. Anyway, but AskALawyer.com is really an effective way for you to get some legal representation that, well, help with a legal thing that you're doing yourself. It's a way for you to keep your costs down, but have the answers that you need. I've had several not clients, but, you know, people on the channel, viewers, longtime viewers of the channel, come to me and say, hey, look, I use AskALawyer.com and I won my case. And they were doing their own legal research. If it's good enough for my grandma, it's good enough for you, because she's in the basement doing all kinds of legal research and trying to get her to stop. But, you know, it's $49 a month. So no matter what she does, it's only $49. And it keeps her busy. So it's the same people that brought you eForm and eSign. That's AskALawyer.com. Okay, so Luigi Mangione. See, I kind of screwed myself up there. Luigi Mangione. And I hope Robert decides to play a little Chuck Mangione in the background here. So Chuck, I did it again. Luigi Mangione pled guilty. And, you know, do you remember when this whole thing went down? The huff and the puff of his lawyers, you know, and they're, oh, this is an outrage, and this is an outrage, and, oh, by the way, he's guilty. That's why I don't really talk to the press, because I don't know how my case is going to come out, honestly. And to grandstand, you know, it's because you want to be in the limelight, you know. It didn't really serve their client to be in the limelight, but Mangione pled guilty in federal court to stalking charges. Now, one would think that stalking charges are not serious, but they are in federal court when you have an enhancement. So one of the things that the federal guidelines have is they have these different enhancements. So, for example, if you have a fraud case and you have more than so many victims, there's an enhancement for that. And what does an enhancement mean? It means it increases the severity level. Well, in this case, you have a federal stalking charge that results in a death. That means that the government can ask for life. He pled guilty, and I think there was another charge too that he pled guilty to. So he pled guilty to the whole indictment. And what that means is that it's a straight plea. It's a plea without an agreement. This judge that he's in front of is not a sympathetic judge. She's a former prosecutor, and she is somebody that is not going to be sympathetic to his back pain. You know, how many people have back pain, but they don't kill people? Unbelievable, honestly. But, you know, what do they have to work with, honestly? So, I mean, I'll my hat's off to the defense team in this, because they don't really have much to work with. You know, it was him in the video. He is now admitted. So what does that do for the state case? We're going to get into that here in a few minutes. So let's get into this. So Luigi has pled guilty to a federal stalking charge resulting in death and also a cyber stalking charge resulting in death. Now, this isn't like the situation where you are following somebody and they run into a train. You know, that's not the kind of no. This is premeditated, cold-blooded murder. How he gets anything less than life in prison is beyond me. The defense team has raised the issue that reason why he did this was because he was frustrated by his back pain. Unbelievable. So what did he do? He said, I shot Mr. Thompson in Manhattan and he died. That just sounds like something a lawyer told him to say. I knew what I was doing was illegal. Those are the words that came out of his mouth to seal the facts of the case. So whenever somebody pleads guilty, there's two parts to a guilty plea. There's the waiver of your rights. You know, you have the right to a trial, your right to presumption of innocence. You have the right to cross-examine any witnesses who are going to testify against you. You have the right to have a defense and bring witnesses you think would be favorable to appear and testify on your behalf of court. You have the right to testify if you wanted to, but you can't be forced to testify. If you chose not to testify, nobody can use that silence against you. Those are the waiver of your trial rights. But then there's a factual basis. So a judge can't take a guilty plea from anybody who claims to be innocent, right? Of course not. And in this case, he said, and this is clear and unambiguous, I shot Mr. Thompson and he died. And I knew that shooting Mr. Thompson was illegal. Of course it did. But what's the issue then? Why is this a big deal? Well, it's a big deal because he's facing trial in state court on the same set of facts, right? So what does that mean? So in Minnesota, and I think most other jurisdictions, if you are facing a federal case and you are facing the same charges in state court, it's called serialized prosecution. You can't be convicted in Minnesota and most other jurisdictions for conduct that occurred and that was pled guilty to in the feds in the state court. Does that make sense? But in New York, they call it double jeopardy.
You ever hear something called double jeopardy? The state says you already killed your husband. They can't convict you of it a second time. That means that when you leave here, you can kill him. And there's nothing anybody can do about it.
And it really isn't double jeopardy. And I'll tell you why it's not double jeopardy. I mean, it may qualify as double jeopardy under their statute in New York. But let's say he pled guilty in state court first. The feds don't have that law. And it's a different sovereign. In other words, different government. You can be prosecuted. You have to get special permission to do it, but you can be prosecuted for the same case. They just did that here in Minnesota not that long ago. They had RICO on these gang cases on the north side of Minneapolis, the high gangs and the low gangs. It's called the highs and the lows. Some guys had already pled guilty to a homicide and were already serving 30 plus years. They pulled them out of their jail and they charged them with RICO. Now, granted, there was other things that they tagged along with it, but the homicide was part of it. So it does happen. And so that's why they entered the plea in federal court first. So his trial is supposed to start next month, but following his plea, his lawyers filed a motion to dismiss the state murder and weapons charges on double jeopardy grounds. Now they're different. They're same facts, but different elements, right? The fact that he had a weapon in the first one, in the federal one, that's really not an element of the crime. Right? I mean, the death is, but the weapons charges aren't. And Mangione previously pleaded not guilty to his federal charges and state cases. Remarks after the hearing, one of Mangione's lawyers said prosecutors are trying to punish him twice. Well, here's the other thing. If you're serving a federal sentence and you have a state sentence coming down the pike, generally speaking, you'll get credit most times for the state case when you're in federal custody. But if you're in state custody, you will not get credit for the federal case. That's why these lawyers did this, because the law is so much more favorable on the state side to be deferential to the federal charges. So Mangione said he posed as an investor to find out information about the 2024 United Healthcare Conference in New York. Savvy, right? Well, what does that sound like? There's only one reason to do that, to find out what his schedule is. So Thompson's widow and other family members became visibly emotional in court as Mangione spoke. So what happens next? He's set for sentencing December 18th. And the judge has given the prosecutors in the state case till October 9th, I think it is, to respond, to get their, I don't know why he gives them that long. I mean, it's a pretty easy issue to kind of, to go through. But keep in mind that the judge did throw out, some charges like the weapons charge in New York State Court. Here's the deal. He pleaded guilty to federal stalking charges in the killing death of United Healthcare Brian Thompson. And then he's going to remain in custody, obviously. He doesn't get out on bail. Judge Margaret Garnett explained to Mangione that he faces a maximum of life in prison. So you have to go over the punishment and all the other things because the key thing in taking a guilty plea is that it's knowing, intelligent, and voluntary. And it assures you that there's not going to be a trial in the state court. Why is that? Because they can use his guilty plea as evidence. I mean, you're done. Mangione's lawyer confirmed to the judge that there is no plea agreement with the government, which they have not agreed to on a sentencing range. A former U.S. prosecutor said that it's very likely that the judge will sentence him to life in prison or something close to it. How he gets anything less than life on a premeditated, sophisticated murder is beyond me. The plea raises questions on how a state case in New York, which was set to go to trial in a few weeks, will proceed. The defense has filed motion to dismiss, but all but one of the charges in the state case, arguing that the dual prosecution arising out of the same event violated Mangione's rights. How successful has the defense been in arguing their stuff? They got some stuff thrown out, but the bulk of everything is still the evidence that was obtained from his backpack came in. The state's case is likely set off a complicated legal battle. Another former U.S. prosecutor told CNN, I'm reading from CNN's website, by the way, a spokesperson from Manhattan District Attorney's Office said it is prepared to litigate the defense motions. It's a gutsy move, but I think it's the only play that they had. I mean, he's going to get life. Let's just face it. He's going to get life in prison. What does he gain by pleading in state court or pleading in federal court? Well, he hopes to get there's a statute that bars, prosecution on the same set of facts or occurrence or behavioral incident. If you're being punished for it federally, you can't be punished for it statewide, right? I think a judge will look at this with circumspection. In other words, with one eye kind of like this. And the reason I say that is because it seems like you shouldn't be able to benefit from a lesser charge to the state court. You know what I mean? I mean, he's facing murder charges in state court, but it just seems to me you shouldn't be able to benefit from that. And you shouldn't be able to skate on a murder charge. Mangione has accepted full responsibility for the death of Brian Thompson with his guilty plea. Mangione's lawyer, Karen Friedman, Agnifilo, do you remember that name? Who was also Mark Agnifilo? Remember on the Diddy trial? He believed that the system has failed him and destroyed his life. She said, reiterating statements Mangione made about several weeks back about pain in the back pain and frustrations navigating the healthcare system. No one's going to be sympathetic to him saying, oh, we totally understand why you took this father away from these children, why you snuffed this guy out on the streets at 6 a.m., why you pretended to be an investor so you can get his schedule. I mean, think about this. There's so many fucking chicks that are just enamored with this guy, And maybe he is handsome. Maybe he probably does. I bet he doesn't smell good in that jumpsuit, though, to be honest with you. Prosecutors also reviewed some of the evidence that they have against Mangione. So they did this in the plea hearing, including security footage. Prosecutor Dominic Gentile, nice name, explained that the elements of the charge they would have needed to prove at trial. So they go over the factual basis. Thompson's mother, widow, and several other family members were sitting in the front row and were visibly emotional when they heard Mangione. I mean, think about that. I mean, they're reliving it. But my understanding is he did not give a detailed explanation of what he did. It was very cursory. It was very, I shot him. He died. I knew it was illegal. And that's about it. After the proceedings, Thompson's family called the plea an important step towards justice in the statement. You know, I mean, that's just bullshit, honestly. I mean, an important step toward justice. Maybe it is in some degree, but it doesn't take the sting of the death away. I mean, it just doesn't. Say what you want to about the healthcare industry, which I think it's a big debate we could have. And I'm not here to debate the healthcare industry. This guy didn't deserve to die like this on the street, you know, and Mangione isn't some hero by any stretch, by any motherfucking stretch. He's not a hero. Outside the courthouse, New York Police Department Commissioner Jessica Tisch told reporters that today is an important moment of accountability. Prosecutors said Mangione's case underscores that violence is not a legitimate way to advance any political or social belief. Of course it's not. So where does this leave us? Could it be that the state court rejects the defense motion? Could be, but I don't think they're going to. And here's the thing. There's no parole in the federal system. There's supervised release. So even if he were somehow to magically get out, he probably would be on lifetime supervised release. In other words, probation for the rest of his life. But my guess is he's going to get life without parole. I cannot imagine a judge, any judge, especially a federal judge, who they hand out decades in prison like they're candy. I mean, they don't give a shit. You know, I've never seen, I just had one not that long ago. My client got life on a RICO case, and it was all in video. I had really not much to argue. I mean, it was pop, 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 you know, in a RICO case. And we were arguing the RICO part of it more than anything else. But when you think about this, it is important for us to realize that somebody lost their life. And they lost their life because somebody shot him in the back in cold blood, got his schedule by pretending to be somebody else. If that's not the height of premeditation, I don't know what is. And so he'll be sentenced. And when he is, there'll be, you know, heartfelt victim impact letters read or testimony given. There will be tears all over the place. There will be somebody missing at the Thanksgiving table. You know, there was going to be somebody missing at the daughter's wedding, at the graduation. You know, and that's this kind of shit that they say. I fucking hate those things so bad because it's like, okay, we all feel like shit. Can you move on? You know, I sound cold, don't I? But I'm on the receiving end of it. You know, I mean, I'm the defense lawyer. And when you look at it from my, you know, you can't argue with anything they say. It's always the same stuff, though. You'll never see her at her wedding. You'll never see the grandchildren. You'll never, you know, it's all that kind of tear-jerking stuff. And I get it. It makes sense. But, you know, fucking hey. Sometimes when you just don't have a defense, those are the hardest cases. So my heart goes out to these guys. But guess what? He got the best defense possible. I mean, I don't know how much he raised in his GoFundMe, but it was a lot of money. So Robert just made a point about his gun. His gun was a 3D printed gun. I think what was the reason that the gun was thrown out? I've had cases where it was an issue about a 3D printed gun and there was no serial number, and so there was like charged an obliterated serial number. Well, there was no serial number because you're not required to have one. And 3D printed guns are not illegal. Didn't you know that? So his defense lawyers are the beneficiaries of a $1.56 million plea in sentencing. $1.5 million. I don't know if they get all that or not. He was all a rage for a while. And there are all these people who think he's some kind of fucking hero. So burst your bubble. Sorry, he's not a hero by any stretch. Violence is not the answer. Antifa is not the answer. MAGA, the guy that ran the protester over is not the answer. Discourse, activism, being involved with your legislature, protesting. That is the appropriate avenue for change, not this. So we'll keep on top of this. And my guess is that the judge probably will grant the defense motion. I'd have to see what the prosecutor is going to say. But if it's substantially the same set of facts that he pled guilty to in federal court, they're probably barred from double jeopardy grounds in state court. But technically speaking, on a federal level, they're not. And the reason I say they're not is because they're different sovereigns. Like I said, the feds don't have the same thing. They do have to go get permission if they're going to do that. And they typically don't do it. But the state court prosecution very likely could be barred. And if it is, brilliant move by the defense team. But what difference does it make? Life is life. You're going to get it here or there. And the feds don't give you good time credit on a life sentence. You sit. God, it's just fucking so unnecessary. When you think about it and you think about what happened, and Robert made a good point. He says it's all the rage when it happens, right? And he's this activist and all this crap, Now, he was probably just an isolated intellectual who was stewing about his own situation and says, fuck this guy. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. But the time will subside. It'll drag on. He'll be out of the headlines. People will stop talking about him. Women will keep writing to him. But you're ultimately in a cell by yourself. You ultimately are isolated from the world. You can't commit any more crimes. Is it worth it? I bet you if you ask him right now, was it? You remember how angry he was when he got picked up? How defiant he was when he was in court? How defiant his lawyers were. I don't like this huff and puff stuff, before, the pretrial stuff. And it makes you look tough, I suppose. But ultimately, look where they wound up. That's why I don't do that. Because I know I could wind up in this spot. And then you look like a moron. So that's our little update on Mr. I'm not going to say Chuck. On Mr. Luigi Mangione. Maybe he could learn the trumpet while he's in there. I know somebody might blow, or anyway. So we'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts. Make sure you don't take your anger out on somebody with violence. Never the answer. Make sure you love the people that you're with, and make sure you have people that you love with you. You know what I mean? Don't isolate yourself. If you're having trouble, I can't tell you how many times law enforcement actually has been the impetus to change for some of my clients. Whether it be drugs or child porn or whatever the issue happened to be, mostly drugs. And they get busted and they're forced to make a change. They're forced to open up to their family members. Don't isolate yourself. I think that's why Michael died. Honestly, he was isolated. He started at COVID and he started using drugs again, really heavy. And he hid it from me really, really well till the end. And it's like, that was too late. So be around the people that you love, open up to them and follow us on Facebook. Follow us on all the platforms, on X, but go to clrbrucerivers.com for all your merch needs. We sell everything here except for the heater, and we'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts.
Bruce Rivers just broke down your case. He know all the charges that you about to face. You ain't coming home till 2058. That self-snitching gon' get you put away. Bruce Rivers just broke down your case. He know all the charges that you about to face. You ain't coming home till 2058. That self-snitching gon' get you put away. 23-hour lockdown, police is at my God.